Welcome as we gather together for another study of the lectionary. We are at the 19th Sunday after Trinity, and
Happy October.
After October, and that's why I'm dressed in my October garb, because this is the we're recording this on Wednesday before Game 3.
Oh.
For all the marbles. And so this is the brew. I'm ready to go. We're going to get through this Bible class so that I can get home and we can watch the Brewers, and hopefully they will move on and defeat the Mets tonight. So we're very excited about that.
Enthroned in your game-watching chair and
I will
just
be
ready.
Absolutely. Now, I might do a little bit of church work during it, but it's going to be busy work.
Busy,
so
yep, things you can split your attention.
We will do busy work during it, but
I might watch Murder, She Wrote. Well.
Yeah,
suspense.
Folks, there's not much I can say.
Well,
it just there's a phrase from my dear friend who is a longtime president of Sherman Park Lutheran Church, who, when you come up against something like this, he'll just look at me and he'll go, "Pastor Jeff, it is what it is."
It is, yes.
And so
nothing can be done about it.
Yeah, and my brother-in-law would have said, "Well, wherever you are, that's where you are." And so
my dad was always very, very big into baseball, and Mom gave birth to this tuba player son, and whether it's catch or baseball, whatever, the ball gets knocked way out into the field, go chase it. And I would say, "Well, why did you hit it out there if you didn't want it out there?" You say, "Why?"
Well, we were hoping that we could turn him into a Brewers fan, but I guess we're not, and that's okay.
I like the concept of brewing.
Well, anyways, we are going to be taking a look at these different texts from Trinity 19. I don't know where we're going to get and how far we're going to get, but again, it speaks to us very distinctly about faith and forgiveness of sins, and how those two pieces come together, because that, when you think about it, that is the centrality of our faith. I mean, we always talk about the centrality being the cross. Well, what is the cross? And the cross is where our God himself paid the price for our sins. And in looking upon him, in believing in him, we have forgiveness of sins. We don't have to do anything for forgiveness. We can't earn forgiveness. It is all God's grace to proclaim upon us, "I forgive you." And that is truly the centrality of our faith. And
a parent takes care of the baby who can't do anything in return.
Yes. And I think our text talks some about that as we go through them. I think we'll start in the Old Testament, right?
Cool.
Genesis chapter 28.
Yep.
So we're just a little past halfway in Genesis. And Pastor Shim, if your voice can handle it,
we'll do it.
Why don't you get us rolling?
I've got 2 mugs here. It's going to work. It'll be good. Got to just warm everything up. So we'll look at a very, very well-known passage of Scripture that you've heard 100 times or more. And some people just abbreviate it Jacob's ladder. But it's Jacob's dream of the ladder or staircase between heaven and earth. And maybe when you go to the old town toy shops, you can play with those little Jacob ladders, wooden pegs that'll go up and down. They're really, really fun. I don't know how they work.
It's funny because for many years I was involved with motorsports. I drove race cars and we built race cars and all that kind of stuff. And there was a period of time in there where there was a rear suspension component for our dirt late models that was called a Jacob's ladder.
Really?
They didn't call it just some type of a ladder suspension. They called it a Jacob's ladder. And it had nothing to do with this at all.
Well, that always cheers me up, though, because it shows you that whether people immediately realize it or not, that scriptural ideas have been deeply embedded into a culture. So it always gives me just this little cheerful thrill.
Yeah.
People can't have given it that name if they didn't originally know about.
Yeah.
And it was a part of their life, and hopefully currently, and will be again. So that always gives me a little
Yeah.
zing.
But unfortunately, in the same way, it really takes away from what Jacob's ladder really was. It's almost as if the world takes the words, the concepts, the phrases, and turns them into something else. I mean, we even hear that with just words of language too. So I mean, you could kind of argue it maybe both ways.
It could
in
be
that
both,
same
way.
way- in
and that's
that
where,
same.
depending on the person you're talking to, you
Yeah.
can find out that someone calls it that without even knowing the reference.
Right.
But it's always nice. Plus, it can then be a conversation starter.
Yes. Do you know where that phrase came
Oh,
from?
cool. Yeah, because a Genesis story right built into your car. Isn't that great? And they can say, what? Oh, well. Yeah, there's these little bitses that I think God throws our way. Throw a dog a bone, you have something to work with, something to talk about. And so often, like around Christmas and things, people will, even when they didn't know before, they sort of accidentally stumble into, what is the meaning of this?
Yes.
There's so much more conversation happening around these times. So, you can make of it what you can.
Peace on earth.
Yeah.
It's a great one for me.
Yeah, what does this mean?
What does this mean?
We
Yeah.
should fear and love God so that. So, Jacob's dream is in Genesis chapter 28. You have all of this wonderful stuff in Genesis, the fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and getting us ready for this really neat thing that happens in Exodus. How does God save his people, come through on his promise, give the commandments, and then immediately give the tabernacle, because we're about forgiving sins. All of this setup is found here. So if you're in Genesis chapter 28, you go all the way down to verse 10. And it says, Jacob left Beersheba and went toward Haran. And he came to a certain place and stayed there that night because the sun had set. Taking one of the stones of the place, he put it under his head and lay down in that place to sleep. And you sleep like a rock or on a rock. And you don't think of a stone as but as church workers' son, I spent a lot of time after school still hanging around the church building and the school long after all the other kids went. And if you want a nap, I have found that 2 to 3 hymnals is about that width. You can take a nap in the pew and sleep fairly well. So you got to get, a little bit of head support. He might have put his coat on it or blanket, I'm sure probably something to cushion it, but he puts his head on there. So remember, 2 to 3 hymnals if you want to have a nap in the pew. He put it under his head and lay down in that place to sleep. And he dreamed, and behold, he is your word.
That's why I love that word. Yep.
There was a ladder, or possibly translated flight of steps. Best one you've ever seen, set up on the earth. The top of it reached to heaven. And behold, the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. They're going up and down. And behold, the Lord stood above it and said, I am the Lord.
How would you make any comparisons between those stairs, or that ladder, or however you want to call that, and the Tower of Babel?
Babel, yes!
I'm sure that there's probably a connection in there someplace,
Your
or at least a curiosity.
Your mind can kind of flip there. You could do your sermon this way, or devotion, where the Tower of Babel wanted to have its top reaching to heaven, and they would make a name for themselves. and it was a human effort.
Yeah, so it was man building the stairway to heaven, where this is the stairway from heaven.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally different.
Yeah.
And the language we use, especially after pietism happened in Europe and America and kind of our American pioneer culture, it's always been a bit of an uphill battle for if you're Lutheran or even Lutheran Catholic, Eastern Orthodox, any of that. This land wasn't our land to start. It's been a different culture where there's so much more, I'm searching for God, or he or she found God, or I'm finding my way to God. I'm resisting all impediments to get to God. And even in Christian language, which is well-meaning, but there's much more of a Tower of Babel emphasis. I'm getting to God by my efforts, by my determination, by my decision to believe I will make Jesus the Lord of my life. No, he already is, you just realize it. Any of that language which is very American, you hear it all over the place with your fellow Christians in the States here, you'll hear it on the radio, hear it on TV. And it's near impossible for people to resist using that language because we're like taking a bath in it. It's all around us.
It's when I've told the story before. There was a local radio show 40 years ago that I used to listen to in the morning, to morning disc jockeys, that type of thing. One was a very active practicing Catholic. The other one grew up Lutheran. I don't know if she was an active Lutheran or not. And they got talking about heaven on one of these morning shows.
Nice.
And the practicing Catholic, said there is a distinct difference between the Catholics and the Lutherans. He said, when you die, you Lutherans get to come right in the front door.
Oh.
And we Catholics have to come up from the basement. I picture that stairway or that ladder, the act of works.
Any sort of work, whether it's a works emphasis, outward works literally, or whether a works emphasis, your internal emotions. That can be a horrible religion of works.
Yes.
I've known probably 3 people that they're Christians, but they belong to the religion of cheerfulness. It's a very cold and cruel religion because they're always going to grin at you.
Oh, okay.
And if they ask you how you are, you better say you're fine, or they'll tell you how blessed you are.
Yeah.
And so there, and then they leave.
And
it's a fixed grin.
That really goes against our epistle reading.
Yeah.
Because in our epistle reading today, he speaks about being angry, but in your anger, do not sin. Do not sin.
Yeah.
And
Plus,
don't hang on to it.
Don't hang on to it. And also, we rejoice with those who rejoice. We also mourn with those who mourn. And that's how we can give care. So there is a great deal of works righteous legalism in the mandatory smile. Darn it, you better act blessed whether or not, It's like, whoa, wait a minute. Yeah. And so legalism can even be emotional. It can be emotional, it can be actions, all sorts of ways that a works righteous pietism will show up. And it's constantly battling against us. So we definitely, as much as possible, keep in our hearts and minds God's ladder down, not our building up. He comes to us. We don't come to him. Right. He finds me. I don't find him. All of this is what God does. The Lord stood above this ladder. We're halfway through verse 13. It said, he identifies himself. It's almost like the beginning of Genesis. In the beginning, God.
Right.
And the story is, what does he do? And he starts, I am.
Yep.
The Lord, the God of Abraham your father, and the God of Isaac.
You could almost, if you want to, the I am the Lord, that's certainly appropriate. You could almost even put a comma in between there, right? I am the Lord. It's
Yahweh, the Lord, is.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
and he's very specific. I'm the one who gave all those those covenant promises to Abraham. Make your nation great, you'll bless all the nations of the world, et cetera, et cetera. And it's interesting here that I wrote you a little map. I don't know if you can see it.
A towel
But-
paper
A
map.
paper towel nap. Use what you have, see? And Jacob is kind of repeating Abraham's journey. It's really interesting because, well, Abraham starts off, he was in the land of Ur of the Chaldeans. You know, he goes up to the land of Haran in Syria. This is all water right here. That's the Mediterranean Sea.
I
And
could have
then,
given you a blue marker for that.
oh, well,
Didn't know that you were making a map.
do you have time?
Sure.
No.
And we could have put it up on the screen.
Well, yeah, really. Well, yeah. And so from over here, and Abraham goes up to around where Syria is, Haran, Anatolian Peninsula is up here, what you call Turkey now. And then God calls Abraham and he goes down to, this is the land of Canaan, becomes the land of Israel with Jerusalem and Bethlehem. And he goes all the way down here. Well, now, Jacob, running away from Esau, and Isaac has died, he's running back to Uncle Laban, way up where Abraham was, in Haran. So Jacob is going to go back to where Abraham almost started. And then Jacob's going to be making this trip down through, he's going to act like the whole people of Israel. God is going to wrestle with him down here on this side of the Jordan River. And that's where he's going to make peace with brother Esau. Uncle Laban's going to make peace and let him go. And he and his family cross over into the promised land after wrestling with God. And God gives him his new name, Israel, wrestles with God. So the places seem very important to me here as he goes. And right here, he's going up here to, he comes to, what is it, Bethel? Well, it used to be Luz. He'll call it Bethel, which means house of God. He's on his way up to see Uncle Laban. He puts his head on a rock to go to sleep. And that's an important place because long ago, Grandpa Abraham sacrificed to the Lord in those places, set up an altar to the Lord. This was a station of worship at one time between Lower Judah and Upper Israel. Later on got totally polluted with idols and everything, but it was an important location.
And from that point on, it has been a place of warfare, like
Yeah.
we're experiencing again.
Right, yeah. Yeah, but this was, Jacob's going to give it the name House of the Lord. And this spot where Abraham set up an altar, where Abraham sacrificed, where it was a place of worship for both Israel and Judah between the promised land, that's where Jacob has this vision of not us building up to God, but God coming down to us. And so much is happening in these places, and he's sort of retracing Abraham's steps. He'll take a long way to re-enter the promised land, just like the Israelites will go on a long way to re-enter the promised land over that river Jordan. It's really neat. It's kind of like all these layers of the family of God are repeating the same story to some degree. Yeah, it's a,
Well, you got my mind going there when you as you were doing that, and then when you mentioned that all the family of God is repeating the same story, what keeps coming back to me is he had that vision or that image of God's ascending and descending in church.
yeah.
Because you're saying he's had it in the house of God,
Yeah, in
you
church.
know, in the place where he built, where the altar was, and it was in church. And then when you made the comment, and God's family has been doing this week
all
after.
through the centuries.
Isn't that what it means to when we gather together here in the Lord's house?
Yeah.
That's it. Just
As we
that was the image. That's the image you described
It's perfect.
for me.
Yeah.
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah, that's the thing. And,
Yeah.
he names it Bethel, which is house of God. We come to the house of God. And, well, let's just keep on letting the cat out of the bag. The bridge between heaven and earth is Jesus. And you mentioned before the cross of Jesus and this connecting point. And heaven is wherever Jesus is. He's here in the body and blood. Well, wherever Jesus is, that's where heaven is.
That's where.
You want to experience heaven before we get there all the way? Well, come take communion.
It's where heaven and earth
Yeah.
come together. And we talked about this in the sermon last week, and even I think in our text as we were talking about our St. Michael's text is when you gather together in church, where are you? You are in heaven.
Yeah.
You are, you don't see it in its fullest, but
Right.
that's where you are made holy. So that means you are set apart, and that even though it feels like you're on the ground, which you are by gravity, you are not. You are separated from the earth, in that you are here in heaven, and God brings His heaven down to you.
Yeah.
And gathers you together with Him, and so wherever He is, there is heaven, and so.
And that's where He calls you perfect and calls you children of God, as though you are already in heaven, because in His presence there you are.
Because you are.
Yeah.
You are. Again, it's not. You don't see it in its fullest, but you are.
Yeah. It's in the house of God. It's in church.
Yeah.
That all of this happens.
Yeah.
And you got to throw in now that very hard pillow. It's on the rock of Christ that we know these things, and we stand on the rock of Christ, and lead me to a place, the rock that is higher than I. And Christ is our cornerstone.
Okay.
And all of this He built on the rock, the church shall stand. And
I never really made that connection with that rock.
Well, I used to teach poetry.
Okay.
No. It's not like the Bible comes out and says you have to think of it this way.
Read poetry, I didn't.
Yeah. We know. We know.
Too much time playing baseball. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Chase the ball. Right, so some of us, when we were doing our homework. So all of these images stack up, and you have the house of God, presence of God. Jesus is the connection between heaven and earth. The angels and archangels are ascending and descending. It's because of God's good and gracious will that we can say, let your holy angel be with me, that the evil foe may have no power over me. God sends the angels to serve and protect us. This last Sunday, it was technically Saturday, we did St. Michael and all angels. Well, they would have nothing to do with us if we were not redeemed by the blood of Christ. And that very passage that talked about St. Michael and the angels also said they've defeated the accuser, Satan, by the blood of the Lamb and the word of the testimony.
Yeah.
Not just any testimony, the testimony.
Yeah.
And so you get the angel connection with it.
Yeah, we talked about that last week. We made that connection with Saint Michael and the angels as being an image of, or an allegory of, what happens in church, with Jesus as the true Saint Michael and the angels as being those messengers, and that that Satan is defeated by their testimony, the word, and by the blood of the Lamb, word and sacrament. So that we talked about that in our Bible study last week, about that being a picture of word and sacrament that happens as we gather together, and that war in heaven is that war that's right here, because in the church we are in heaven. There's this war that is going on.
Jesus tells his disciples, I saw Satan fall like lightning out of heaven, while the disciples were out proclaiming the gospel.
Yes.
Again, it's a big, it's a cultural thing. The testimony means different things. Well, we especially mean the testimony.
Yeah.
And that's the account of Jesus, not the testimony of how I did last week. That may cheer you up or it might depress you, but it doesnn't save you. The testimony does. And so Satan is defeated.
Which again, that goes with our gospel text as they bring the paralytic man in, and their desire is for him to have that earthly healing, which will make his life better, but that doesn't truly heal him.
Right.
Where it is the forgiveness of soul. It goes, that's a direct connection then to.
Right, yeah. Yeah, last year I was healed of the flu, and that was great. This year I got it again.
Yeah.
But it's so much, the testimony gives you eternal life, not just a temporary fix.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a big difference between the testimony versus a testimony. Totally. And then Luther weighs in on there too. You know, they overcame Satan by the blood and the word of the testimony. And if you want to be catechism-ish, Luther puts in, not with gold or silver, but with his holy, precious blood and his innocent suffering and death. So we got catechism in.
There you go.
Yeah, see, we're
yeah,
trying to get
catechism.
everything.
We even can then bring the other catechism phrase that you only hear in the Lutheran Church, and that is the means of grace, which is it's such a wonderful phrase that outside of our church body, it has no familiarity.
Right. This means of grace and that's specifically the means of how does the devil defeat Satan? How does God defeat Satan? Means of grace. If you're Halloween people, you can say it's the silver bullet that fights off the wolf for you. These wonderful, miraculous means of grace.
It's word and sacrament.
Yeah.
And that's what we talked about last week. And again, as we come to this text, we see that is where we are at each and every time we are in the presence of Christ, where heaven meets earth, So
right, and the meditation. Oh, there's another rock forever. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of our hearts be acceptable in thy sight, Lord Christ, rock and our Redeemer. Yeah. So all of these layers are stacked in here. It's a super duper club sandwich.
Yeah. Well,
all of this stuff.
And I think that's really important because the tendency for us is always to take a look at these kind of texts kind of in that specific context or as a story or as a, whatever the case is. Yeah, this is what happened back then. And yet all of this applies to you. It's written for you.
Yeah.
Okay? And so how does this connect to you? Well, that's exactly what Pastor Shim was speaking of. This is what happened in this text is exactly what happens here when you gather together around word and sacrament.
Yeah.
The exact same thing. Over, and like you said, the family of God, over and over and over again. We can say week after week,
continual,
month after month, year after year. Yeah. Absolutely.
This is happening.
It is happening.
Yes. Yes.
Excellent.
With his church. Yeah. So again,
now that we beat that down like a dead horse.
Well, you must have got it by now. Can't have missed that. So again, he says, I am the Lord, the God of Abraham, your father, the God of Isaac. Identifies himself very clearly. The land on which you lie, I will give to you and your offspring. Where is the land on which he lies? He is right smack dab in the middle of Israel, or Israel and Judah. Bang, right in the middle of the promised land when God says this. Your offspring shall be like the dust of the earth. If you're tired of dusting, just think of how many offspring that means as far as children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And here again we bring in our book of Hebrews. It's not the physical, biological lineage, but it's those of you who share the faith of Abraham are Abraham's offspring, even if you're Polish, even if you're Tanzanian, even it doesn't matter.
There's probably a hymn or two that speaks of that too, isn't there?
There's a hymn or two like that. There's even that perennial Sunday school, Father Abraham had many sons, I'm one of them, so are you. And it's just true.
Yeah, so
it's just true.
So here you have it compared to the dust of the earth. You've also seen it, the sand on the seashore, the stars in the sky, he always uses references of things that you can't count.
Right, you're not gonna. It's very encouraging.
Yeah.
And sometimes you want to ask, like Jesus' disciples, Lord, are only a few gonna be in heaven?
Yeah.
And that can strive to enter the narrow way. Sometimes God gives you these wonderful, it's going to be so many.
Yeah.
He's saving so many.
Well, but then you get into the book of Revelations and he specifically says,
a great multitude that
44,000.
no one could number.
Yeah.
Well, and those go together.
Yeah.
144,000.
144,000, that's it.
Yeah.
You know, you better be in that 100, right?
Well, 144,000. And then some denominations take that literally.
That's my point. That's
Yeah.
I'm saying this a little bit tongue in cheek, so we want to make sure
Yeah.
that we clear that up.
Yeah, 144,000. You read one verse later, a great multitude that no one could number, of every
yes.
tribe and language and nation and people. Yeah.
You know,
so there's great encouragement.
You're right. So he speaks of, you know, in scriptures he will speak of a remnant, and he'll use that term. Sounds like there's just a little bit, and yet the number is so great you can't count it.
Yeah.
You know, and so I think.
You won't be bored in heaven.
No, I think some of that is as he speaks of the remnant. We're speaking of those in that specific, whatever that specific time and place is, that the few amongst the whole, but yet in the wholeness of the salvation story, the number is a great number. So it really is the both and. So when he speaks of the remnant, it's speaking of you as the church militant, you know, you as the little Sherman Park Lutheran Church or little Berea Lutheran Church, the 25 or the 100 in the city of a million.
City, yeah.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
you feel small in this
Yeah.
temporary
There's a
moment,
remnant. Yeah.
but spread across eternity.
But
The
it's trust-
invisible church is
yeah.
gigantic. It's a
Yeah,
wonderful hope.
right. So when we get to that church triumphant, the number is, you know, unimaginable.
Yeah, it's a great,
yeah.
absolutely great.
So-
Something to celebrate.
So understand that these are not, you know, as God uses this language, he's not contradicting himself in any way. No. He's just speaking to you in a both and. As the church on earth and as the church in heaven. He's speaking to you in a
both and.
Yeah.
And sometimes we feel it more one way or the other. But in the whole of eternity, the invisible reality is God's victory, his triumph. And then he emphasizes that. Not only does he say the dust of the earth, and you shall spread abroad to the west and the east and the north and the south. Now that's something, because, well, you could spread a little bit north, east, and south, but this gospel wraps around the globe called the earth, and it goes all over the place. You were a Girl Scout or a Boy Scout, you got to play with a compass, north, south, everybody, everywhere. You know, this wraps around all these directions, and in you and in your offspring shall all the families of the earth be blessed.
All the families. Yeah, notice he doesn't say just all the Israelites, all the Jews. He says all the families of all the earth.
Of the earth. And even now, when it seems like whenever there's violence in the Middle East, which is often, all of a sudden Christians react, oh, well, it's the Jews that are supposed to be.
Yeah.
We try to keep, decade after decade, all the families of you are the people of God. It's not a geographical restriction.
Right.
And as it says in Hebrews, it's not a biological restriction.
Nope.
And try not to get hung up on that. You can totally empathize, that's great. But don't confuse it with the great victory of salvation that's for all people. Paul makes a big deal of this. In you and in your offspring. And in the book of Galatians, he says offspring singular. It doesn't say offsprings, but offspring. And Paul says this is the Christ.
Yes.
In the Christ, all families will be blessed.
Right.
Yeah.
So when you hear again, and we've said this before a number of times, when you read and hear the word Israel in Scripture, do not consider it a place on the map.
Right. Don't think geographic.
Wipe that, get that out of your mind, that, it is not a place on a map.
Right. Think of your Christian jersey, sports uniform thing.
Yeah.
Remember, you get the number 12, and you get the capital letter C.
Yeah.
Sesame Street, brought to you by the letter C and the number 12. And you see Israel, think capital C church. That's you.
That's you.
That's all believers.
Yeah.
Throughout time.
Israel is just another name for the church.
Yeah. If there's a Christian living in Antarctica right now, having tea with a penguin. They're Israel.
They're Israel.
They're Israel. So, see, I just looked up penguins yesterday.
Okay.
Okay, so this great victory, great blessing here, and we get to see the culmination of this story. Whereas, as part of the Bible says, oh, the prophets and the patriarchs, they long to look into these things. Mm-hmm. We get to know Christ on the cross reigns from his throne there. Verse 15, behold, I am with you and will keep you wherever you go. And that almost starts to sound like the end of Matthew. Mm-hmm. I am with you always, even to the end of the age. And God is obsessed with being with. He's Emmanuel, God with us. Mm-hmm. And in the tabernacle, he's God with us. In the flesh of Jesus, he's God with us. In the body and blood, he's God with us. We're in heaven. So
it's Isaiah 43. I've called you by name and you're mine. There's nothing, and nothing will separate that.
Right, yeah. Where can I go from your presence?
God, how often does God speak of you being his, and he'll never leave you, never forsake you. I just think that's this is just another one of those where he keeps encouraging that. He keeps strengthening us with that. Behold, and with the word behold. Behold, I am with you.
You made me think of this. When even humans, if they don't have the gospel, when they really want to intensely express love, they always promise always.
Always.
There's a Shel Silverstein book. I don't know if Silverstein was a Christian or not, but this mother rocking her baby, toddler, kid, even when he was an old man, I'll love you forever, I'll like you for always, as long as I'm living, my baby you'll be. And in one high school classroom, I had a big, tough guy suddenly crack down and weep. Mm-hmm. Oh, in the mid, because that's like our most intense loving language. I'm with you always. God is love.
It's the promise we make at our marriage vows.
Yeah, always.
Always.
Yeah, and with God, that always is not interrupted by death. Mm-hmm. It just keeps on going.
Yeah.
So yeah, I will, wherever you are, I'll be with you wherever you go, and we'll bring you back to this land. He's going to bring them back to the promised land. For I will not leave you until I have done what I promised you. I will not leave you. I will not forsake you, Jesus says, until I've done what I've promised you. You can get, is it John 8, John 6? Help me. I go to prepare a place for you.
Oh, yeah.
My numbers are
John
off.
6.
John 6? Okay.
Or is it 14?
Oh, that's another one. Could be 14.
John 14.
Okay. Yeah. But yeah, I go to prepare a place for you, and where I am, you shall be also.
Yeah.
That lines up with this.
Yes.
And I will not leave you until I've done what I promise you. So you're always with the Lord.
And what does he promise you is that he will come back for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yes.
And you get to go to the promised land. Yeah. Then Jacob awoke from his sleep and said, surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. Now, footnote here. You had something on your mind there.
Nope. I was just thinking, and when he said, I did not know it, it's almost like words of contrition. It's almost it's almost like, forgive me, Lord. Yes, that's kind of how, again, it just reminds me of church.
Yeah. Right. And let's not try to be high and mighty. The Jews totally knew and believed God is omnipresent.
Yes.
This isn't new for them. They knew. The Jews totally knew God is, where shall I go from your presence? Wherever I go, you're there. Mm-hmm. But then, so when they say, the Lord is in this place, or to Moses in the burning bush, take off your sand. The place you are standing is holy ground. And the God is with you in the tabernacle. Yeah. The God is with you in the church. Yeah. They know darn well what they mean. They know God is everywhere. They know that God does special things in special places with us.
Yeah. We're studying at Berea Lutheran Church for the last year, we've been studying the book of Exodus. And of course, it is the setting up of the tabernacle and in the place where, where God's presence is. And, I think it's remarkable to have that.
Yeah.
You're right. That presence of God, it's not, like you said, it's not just an omnipresent thing. This is
He's doing something.
Yeah, and again, it's one thing to say in this world, God is, yes, God is with me out on the lake. Mm-hmm. That's true. Yeah. That's not a false statement.
Right.
However, it's different than saying God is present here in word and sacrament.
Right.
Two different things.
Two different things.
And for us to ignore this because, well, God's with me out there, is to ignore what he is saying to us.
Right. Yeah. For Hebrews and for Christians, the both and is very meaningful and very important. So there's some contrition that he forgot, like we all do, that God is with us wherever we go. It's very difficult to remember minute by minute, week by week, that God is with you wherever you are. And it is very important. And I do have contrition that, oh boy, an hour went by and I already forgot God is with me.
Yeah.
At the same time, you definitely want to be, we don't want Christians to use it as an excuse to stay away from the things of God.
Correct.
If God is leading the children of Israel out of the land of slavery to Mount Sinai and all this, do I want to stay back in Egypt? Well, God was with me here. I don't need that. Mm-hmm. No, I wouldn't be so silly. We Christians say silly things. At the same time, on one hand, we'll say, oh, well, I don't need to be in church. God is with me while I'm fishing. But then these same Christians turn around and say, oh, I wish I could go back and see Jesus.
Yeah.
Well. Okay, well, when we start talking silly like that and contradicting ourselves, well, we're missing something about what God has said. So the Hebrews knew both and.
And which is really what Jacob is saying here, is he's saying, he's right here and I didn't see it.
Yeah, there is a both and there. Surely the Lord is in this place as the Lord is in the body of Jesus incarnate. Merry Christmas, Happy Easter, tabernacle language. And I did not know it. And he was afraid. Now, I like to sort of push in a little extra flavor in here. Yeah, we talk about awe and respect, but I don't mind saying afraid. I can like lightning and be darn.
We should fear and love. Fear
and love. And if you have, I can totally trust the helicopter that takes me. I'm still scared, and that's okay.
We should be shook by his presence.
Yes, to be.
He's God.
Yeah, and if you've had any life experiences where you really noticed that God possibly worked a miracle for your safety or there's a fear. There's a rejoicing at the same time. They don't have to contradict. So he was afraid and said, how awesome is this place. Now we've got it's not just awesome, man. You made the 3-pointer.
No, but look at the difference. How many, we were reminded of Jesus and Peter. The presence of Jesus and of course that miraculous catch. And what it was, Peter's response wasn't, how awesome is this place? His response was, Lord, go away from me.
I'm a sinful man, a man of unclean lips.
Right, but then you come to the Transfiguration, we see and Peter goes, what? How awesome this is.
Yeah, let's stay here.
To the point where, let's keep it let me just have it just for myself,
Yeah, just stay where it is.
Yeah.
So it's incredible. There's both this afraid and how awesome is this place.
Yeah.
It's full of awe, as in you could almost faint. Think of awesome or awful. The old language, it's so overwhelmingly amazing. You're that far away from passing out from the sheer overwhelming excitement of it all. How awesome
We're not
is this
talking
place?
awful, A-W-F-U-L. It's awful, A-W-E-F-U-L.
Yeah,
Awful.
it's incredible.
Yes.
It's just overwhelming.
Awe-filled.
Is this place, and of course, what makes a place holy? Well, the presence of God makes it holy.
Yes.
The place where the fiery bush was, The place you're standing is holy ground. Well, it's not like it started off holy ground just special about the dirt. It was holy ground because God was there speaking to Moses.
Yeah.
So this place is awesome because God is there. This is none other than the house of God, as he said, church, where God is interacting with us for our good, and this is the gate of heaven.
There. We're right behind him, the baptismal font, right?
Yep.
The word and sacrament.
Yeah.
There you go.
Right there.
That's the gate of heaven.
One of our profs we both had at seminary, really big in history, he went out east and he found a church that they built the inside of the church so that the baptismal font was here and the altar was here and the pulpit was here, all in one line.
Okay.
Because that was their way of emphasizing means of grace, gateway to heaven. These are the gifts God gave to save us. It's really interesting. You know, it's not the normal way we think about it.
And note what he doesn't say. This is the stairway to heaven, because he talked before about the image of the stairway or the ladder. This is it is a gate. It's on the same level, on the same plane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Quick, easy quiz. You have to get an A. Who in the Bible said, "I am the gate of the sheep"? You have to get that right.
Your kids will.
Your kids will
Because
get it.
they won't.
I am Yahweh, the
There he
gate
goes.
of the sheep, the way.
Yeah.
And that way to heaven. So we have, the life of the church in what people call Jacob's ladder. And all of that stuff packed into that spot. And later on, Jacob will continue and we'll see what God does. He'll wrestle with Jacob before he crosses into the promised land over the river Jordan, giving him the name Israel, the one who wrestles with God. And that same covenant keeps on. All families of the world will be blessed through your offspring.
Yeah. Outstanding.
Such an exciting text. I'm just worn out.
Well, do we have any time left? I don't even know.
We were really rollicking it up.
That's okay. No, that's fine because we reference the other place. We have about 13 minutes.
All right.
So I think, why don't we go to, you want to go to the gospel or the epistle?
Your choice.
I don't know.
If I do this, that means not it. The kids taught me that. Finger on the
Okay,
no means not
well,
it.
I tell you what, let's start with the gospel, and it's only a few verses.
Yeah, it's pretty short.
We'll read through it, see if there's anything in there that's of any intrigue to you. There.
Yeah, we're in
chapter
Matthew.
9, Matthew chapter 9. It is one of the miracles of Jesus, and as Pastor Shim is getting to it, if you need to know where Matthew is, it's right at the beginning of the New Testament. So
Where's that?
right
Is
after
that like
the
the
old.
front? Is that
It's the gospel, it's beginning of the gospel part.
Oh.
All the rest of it is the law, right? Those first 39, that was
Oh,
all
dear,
the law.
oh, dear.
Right, okay.
He's being sarcastic.
Of course. Okay. We're at Matthew chapter 9. So we're not, hold on.
You got too excited there.
Came
You lost
right
your-
off
yeah.
my brewer shirt. Here we go.
There.
To put it in a context, or kind of as a narrow context, this would be not long after the Sermon on the Mount. Okay, Sermon on the Mount would have taken us for the first few chapters prior to this, and so now Jesus, after that first sermon, now Jesus is traveling and he's healing. And he's already begun, he's making a name for himself about healing because they are going to come to him because he is the miracle worker. And yet those that bring the paralytic, they bring their friend. The Bible, here we're going to see that Jesus speaks of them as having faith. So they understand him more than just more than just a miracle worker. They see him as the Messiah, or as possibly the Messiah. I mean, that would be the reason to use the term that they saw that they are people of, they are ones of faith.
Yeah.
Okay? And so as he speaks to them as ones of faith, he is going to also now speak to them about what truly ails them. Okay? And what truly ails them, or this man, is not his paralysis. His paralysis is a product of sin. It is a consequence of sin. It is, pain, suffering, sorrow. All of this are consequences of sin. But what truly ails us is sin. That's what separates us from God. And so Jesus is going to heal him first of that. And in doing that, what he's going to do is the man is going to be suffering a little bit longer. Because his suffering is now going to be on display for to show the very power of God. Paul talks a lot about that. Is that the suffering that he experiences is God showing the rest of the world the power that he has. And
if we suffer, it is for your good.
It's for your good.
Yeah.
It's this gift of faith has been given to these clay cracked pots. That type of thing. There's just another way of looking at it.
And it is neat how you say that he takes care of the sin problem first. Before the effects of sin clear up.
Yes.
And I like that emphasis.
Because the other way, and I kind of mentioned this in the message this week, is the other way. If he did it if it was the other way, if he addresses just the effects of sin or the consequence of sin, whichever term you want to use, if he just deals with that, it's almost like teasing. Because what are you doing? You're going to give him a few moments of pleasure.
Yeah.
But in the end,
you're going to die anyway.
You're going to die, and
it's like the one leper that came back to say thank you. Well, it's not just about saying thank you. He went back to where the permanent source of life is.
Yes.
So that he doesn't just get sick or die again later, and that's the end of the story.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And also, I was thinking I could use it to try to tease God. Oh, God, I need you. Okay, I'm physically healed. Now I'm going to run away again.
Now I'm going to,
And not care about my spiritual healing.
And I'll come back to you when I need you again.
Yeah.
And it's about me. It's about me. It's about me.
Yeah, sometimes you don't give the puppy the treat until after it's gotten its little shot or injection or taken the medicine.
Or yeah, exactly right.
I'll wag my tail and run off when I think I have what I want.
But they're willing to sit there and take that shot, knowing that there is.
This is waiting for. Yeah, there's all the other benefits.
Okay. All right. So by now you should be there, Matthew chapter 9, and getting into a boat, he is going to cross over and came to his own city. Now, his own city, we would say, well, that would be Nazareth, but that's not where. Nazareth is in a port town. He is speaking about Capernaum. And why Capernaum? That's where, while it is true Jesus was from Nazareth, he spent most of his time in Capernaum. And that would have been like that was his place. That was where
sort of like would Nazareth be like the sleeper town, but really everything happens.
But really everything happens in Capernaum. And again, because of the fact that it's a major port city, and so that would have been when it said his own city. They're talking Capernaum.
Yeah, you think, and he came unto his own, and his own did not know him. That could maybe resonate in some of that.
Absolutely. And so, behold, some of the people brought to him a paralytic. See, now this word "behold" is there. We're going to see something heavenly happen. There's your word. Remember that. Yeah. That was good. I like that one.
Thank you.
Okay. And behold, some people brought to him a paralytic, lying on a bed. And when Jesus saw their faith, he said to the paralytic, "Take heart, my son, your sins are forgiven." Okay, so notice here, it doesn't speak specifically about the man's faith. It speaks about the faith of the ones that knew to bring their friend to the Messiah. And so there's almost like an evangelism that goes on in here. As we talk about that, you believe. And so what is it that what is our response to that faith is we bring those who are in need of healing. In need of, and what we mean by in need of spiritual healing, in those who don't know who the Messiah is. That's what we're talking about. And to bring them, and we are the ones that bring them. We are the ones who invite. Now Jesus certainly goes and seeks them out. And there's no reason for us not to believe that he didn't get into the boat to go to Capernaum seeking them specifically. Okay? But at the same time, what do we see? We see the response of the faithful is to bring those that are...
By the power of the Spirit, we learn to love as he loves and see as he sees, and we get to be these introducers. Or was it Nathaniel took Peter to meet Jesus? I'm feeling fuzzy right now. Anyway, it's introducing. We have found the Christ. Come on. Brings them to to Jesus that way. Yeah.
And so, of course, take heart. Take heart. We see other phrases like that, right? Be courageous.
Be strong and courageous.
Be strong and
be terrified.
Have no fear.
Fear
all
not.
of these types. Those are the phrases that we're talking about. And look what he calls them. He calls them my son. And understanding they believe that this is God, okay, or they wouldn't have brought him. So that's what it means by they had faith. They believe he is God, the Messiah of God, and it is the Messiah of God who calls him his all.
Knowing he's God makes sense. If they think of the visual contrast or startle if people aren't thinking he's God, just us socially, what it makes you look. For me, it's my son.
It was kind of creepy. Now,
it's weird. And Jesus is only 30. He's a young man. Young man. 33, maybe 32, 31.
Right.
That would look odd. Just visually, unless they know that he is. Oh, this is eternal God.
If we did that with each other, we would say my brother. Or my sister. That type. And that's our relationship with the church. So note here that we have 3 minutes. Note that we have the relationship with father, son, my son. We have the relationship with brother and sister. So they brought their brother. And where it intersected, he calls him his son. So where does it intersect? It intersects,
which also helps us shed some light in Advent. They'll call him Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father. Are they calling Jesus the Father? Well, Jesus can also call us son and daughter too.
Yes,
not just God the Father. It is, there is that status he has with us.
And what does he do? The first thing, the immediacy. We don't see the man confess his sin. We don't see him confess. We don't see him say, "Lord, have mercy on me, a sinner." What does he do? He forgives him his sin. And so it is God's forgiveness of you that leads you or draws you to speak it, to recognize that you are a sinner. It is not you going up to God, confessing your sins so that he'll forgive you.